This is what I meant last week when I said, instead of going out to eat with Mom for Mother's Day, me and Junior with Mom will do our takeout next week. Hey everyone, this is Will O'Toole welcoming you to another edition of Park Ridge Sports History. I know the cartoon was maybe a week late for Mother's Day, but then how many of us husbands constantly forget our dear and beloved wives on that precious day? And so I always have to do a cartoon that kind of outlines the problems we have as husbands as we forget the most important person in our lives, our wives. This week, though, I thought it would be fun. I was going back and forth with my brother. And big Red Sox fan, loves baseball history like I do. Well, both my brothers do. But I, in particular, going back and forth with my brother Ed, and we were talking about a lot of different things, kind of what I do with this show, and that is bringing what I always say, I'd like to start with one theme, and then every once in a while I go off on a different tangent, which is exactly what happened. We were down a couple of weeks ago, my brother and my brother-in-law and myself and my brother Jim, we all got together and we started all things sports, and it just went off into different tangents. Well, this time we got off onto the tangent of 4 home run games. So he has been willing to volunteer some little tidbits for a later show, which I'm probably going to tape later this week. Last week, you can hear me, I was with the flu and just was under the weather. I just couldn't move about. So this was really the first time, and so I'm a week late with this episode, but I plan to do a doubleheader this week. And this one, this is my, I guess, I do annual petitions or annual drives for getting players into the Hall of Fame. This actually came out of this conversation about 4 home run guys, and specifically Rocky Colavito. And we were talking about the 61 Yankees and the 61 Detroit Tigers. And the Tigers, of course, won 100 games that year. And but they didn't win the division, or they didn't win the league. And of course, it went to the Yankees. And really, to be fair, they were never in the pennant race with those Yankee teams that won 109 games. Even though the Tigers kind of played tough against the Yankees that year, and they did win 27 of the 36 meetings with the 2 expansion teams, they couldn't get over the hump. Then the following year, they went back to what I would consider almost like their mean level of like 85, 86 wins. And the reason I bring all this up is you start to wonder, why didn't the Tigers win? Now, yes, I know they won in 68 with that fantastic team of Lolich, who won 17 games, 17-9, and of course, Denny McClain with 31 wins, still the last guy to win 30 games. Probably never will be achieved again in this day of pitch counts, short innings, and multiple relief pitchers in a game. Heck, we can't even get guys to complete 31 games in their entire careers, let alone win 31 games in a season. It's just the way that the game has evolved. But that team, of course, had Kaline, who was actually hurt and came in, which is why Mayo Smith, who was the manager that year, was faced with an unbelievable decision. How do we get a guy who's been with this ball club since 54 or maybe even 53, won a batting title in 55? And unbelievable WAR. If you take a look at his WAR, Al Kaline, how do I get him back into the lineup? We've won the division. Now I got to get him back into the lineup. And what he did, Mayo Smith took a huge gamble. It worked out, beating the Cardinals in 7th game by inserting center fielder Mickey Stanley, who was a good defensive center fielder, and put him at shortstop, replaced Don Wirt from shortstop, and sat him on the bench. So he took maybe a hurt in terms of defense at short for the extra bat with Al Kaline. Today, that would never have happened because you have the DH. But it was a huge gamble by Mayo Smith. And he felt, though, and I agree with him, probably felt he owed it for all the years of loyalty that Kaline showed to the Tigers. And of course, Kaline had a good World Series. And it was really Lolich, though, with the 3 wins. And I do believe he wins the MVP of the World Series. But I've often made the case, and I've done a previous show, where Mickey Lolich was probably the MVP of that team, not Denny McLain. McLain, of course, had an under 2 ERA, but Mickey Lolich would save a game. He would be used in other relief situations. In fact, I think I even brought up a point, the games that he was involved in, I think I think 5 of the extra 9 games he was involved in and stuff like that, or 6 of the extra, the Tigers actually won. So you're talking about 6 plus the save, that's 7. Now you're talking about 26 wins, plus the 3 in the World Series. So you're talking about 29 wins. McLain, of course, wins. He goes 1-1 in the World Series, so he's 32-7. I think I make a pretty good case. And, of course, I do believe he got better run support, Danny McLain, than Mickey Lolich. That being said, they had a wonderful season between the two. They had 50 wins. They had almost half the wins of the Tigers. And if you had to save, they probably did have half the wins of the Tigers that year. But the Tigers were managed by Mayo Smith. In 61, the Tigers went up with their 100 and some odd wins against this guy, Ralph Houck. Now, the reason I bring up Houck is that he's not in the Hall of Fame. He's not in the Hall of Fame. He won 3 pennants with the Yankees, 60, 61, 62, actually 63 as well. He won 2 World Series, so he's 2-2 in the World Series. He brings home the bacon for the Yankees, winning 2 World Series. And yet, when you think about it, he's not in the Hall of Fame. And you wonder why. He had a successful run there. People can say, well, the Yankees were a dynasty team at the time. And yes, Houck was coming in maybe at the tail end of those Yankee dynasties, but he still won 2 World Series. And I think anytime you go 50-50, in other words, if you get team to 2 World Series and you win 1, you get the 4 and you win 2, you get the 6 and you win 3, I think you're doing an incredible thing, because anything can happen in the World Series. Anything can happen in a championship round. Guys get hurt, a little bit of luck goes against you, slumps, etc. So Houck, and I was looking at this, so I'm just going to take a look at Houck before I get to the 2 guys that I really think I'm going to devote more time in this show to. It's Danny Murtaugh, who happens to be one of my personal favorites. Still cannot understand why this guy, who's won 2 World Series in a pirate franchise that went from 1927 to 1960 without even sniffing a pennant, let alone a World Series, and he then wins 2 in a matter of 11 years. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. I think there are certain franchises and there are certain guys with certain franchises that, yes, they go like peanut butter and jelly together. But also, I can't imagine, maybe I'll even argue this. Could I see another manager being able to do that from one of the esteemed big shot organizations, the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Cardinals, being able to do what Murtaugh did with a pirate, one of the smallest markets in all of baseball, winning 2 World Series and beating the Yankees and kind of getting revenge on that 2017 team, the last pirate team to get into the pennant for Pittsburgh. And he kind of got revenge with that dramatic Game 7 win off the bat of the home run off by Bill Mazeroski off Ralph Terry to win the game 10-9. And that was a result of Danny Murtaugh. I had this card. That's why I keep showing this. I didn't have it autographed, but I love finding it. And I don't know what year this is. I know it's early 60s. But one thing I like about these pirate uniforms, there are certain teams that just always look good in the vest. Now, when I was growing up, there was 3 teams that I recall having the vests. One was the Cleveland Indians, and they had the Wahoo Indian on the one side. The other was the Pirates, and I think they had it up until like 69 or 70. And the Cincinnati Reds had a number of vest looks, one with pinstripes, which I really liked, and the other just with the C in the red, or the running red logo that they had. But I love the vest look. Now, does it work for every team? No. Do pinstripes work for every team? No. But they're a nice break from the standard. And here's amazing things as I'm talking to my brother about this. And I'm saying, Cito Gaston, I knew him as Clarence Gaston growing up when he played for the Padres. Did not know this. He was a Braves product. I guess came over with the Padres in the expansion. But actually had rookie status with the Padres in 1969. You can tell he came over from the Atlanta Braves. Didn't have, obviously, enough at-bats to qualify in any previous year with the Braves. And, of course, Bill Davis. Personally, I've never heard of Bill Davis. The only Bill Davis I know of was the name of the character from Family Affair. That's how I remember that name. I do not remember or even recall Bill Davis playing in the major leagues, but I'll look that up if I have some time. This Cito Gaston becomes the manager of the Blue Jays, and of course is the only manager to win a World Series outside the United States. And he did it in back-to-back years with those 92 and 93 Blue Jays, who were a really good team, did have a ton of future Hall of Famers and great players on that team. And in fact, Cito Gaston, when I was reading about this, and I'm going to get into their records and all the rest of it, Cito Gaston was the all-star coach for the American League and actually started or brought to the All-Star game like 6 or 7 Blue Jays and was vilified for that. Baltimore fans were irked because their starting pitcher never got into the game. And he brought along Roberto Alomar and let's just say Alfredo Griffin. He brought along a couple of young players. Maybe it was John Olerud. And he was criticized for bringing too many of his own guys in there. And he said, listen, they're loyal to me. They're good, young, upcoming players. And he wasn't wrong because Alomar, I think of the 6 guys, 3 of them wind up either in the Hall of Fame or, could be Hall of Fame players. And I know that one of them was Roberto Alomar. But if I can, let me just get to this. Ready for this, I just want to give you this. This is what made me think about it. I was just doing a quick research. I was really more interested in finding how many guys have won 2 World Series that are not in the Hall of Fame. Well, really, when I think about it, and I could be wrong about this, Tom Kelly, who I should devote some time to because he's a New Jersey guy, I don't believe Tom Kelly is in the Hall of Fame because he won 2 World Series with the Minnesota Twins, the only guy to ever win for the Minnesota Twins. And, of course, he beat 87. He beat Whitey Herzog, who just recently passed. In 91, he beat Bobby Cox, Hall of Famer, and the Atlanta Braves in that dramatic 7 games. Let me just see something here. I'm using Baseball Reference. He, of course, I have him as not being in the Hall of Fame, so I'm going to have to devote a little time to him as well. Let me just do this. Let me just move this over. But the guys who irk me the most, they've been out of the game for a while, and I apologize that I didn't include Tom Kelly or pictures of him on this, but the guy who I really think deserved to be in there only because of what he accomplished. And actually now I'm starting to think Kelly should be in it. First of all, to win 2 World Series, let alone 1, and now you're winning 2, it definitely puts you in a different stratosphere in terms of managers. Now you can say, well, the guy got lucky or all the rest of it. You still win 2 under the biggest pressure, which is the World Series. And Tom Kelly was able to do it in 87, beating the St. Louis Cardinals. Yes, he won all 4 games at home and lost all 3 at St. Louis. But that's how you're built. You're built for home, as my brother says. And then he won in 91, winning a dramatic 1-0 game in extra innings. It was just unbelievable what he accomplished. So I'm going to throw Tom Kelly in there. He does have a losing record lifetime, but here's what you have to start to say to yourself. The Twins, just take a look at their franchise when they first started all the way back in Washington. All right, they didn't win since 1925. And then they move to Minnesota, win in 65 under Sam Mele. They lose 7-7 to Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, and the LA Dodgers. In Game 7, of course, Koufax wins a dramatic 2-0 game. Lou Johnson hits a big home run. I don't know why I can remember all that. And I cannot remember certain things from that 91 series, but I'm going to get to it right now. That 91 team won 95 games. Now, you might think it's not a lot, but for the Twins, a team that is seen as small market, it's few and far between. Actually, the guy I was thinking of was Jack Morris, Hall of Famer, won that dramatic Game 7, 1-0. So I was, thanks to Baseball Reference, helping point that out. And of course, they had Frank Viola on that team. Of course, Kirby Puckett. I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean. And I get into, not an argument, but I think this is maybe one of the reasons that Mattingly is not in the Hall of Fame. You can make arguments for him, against him. At this point, first of all, it's what I said last week about Lou Brock. To deny him or any of these players entry because you don't think they're a first ballot Hall of Famer, then don't put them ever in. But if you think they're a Hall of Famer, put them on your ballot first time. Don't wait years and then say, oop, finally decide. Because a number of things can happen. One of them is the death of a player. And that's what I was always worried about with guys like certain players, that they would never live to see their great day and their career immortalized in Cooperstown. And we, as baseball fans, and I think this is the contempt that baseball writers might have for baseball fans, is they don't think we, the baseball fan, the lowly baseball fan, the guy who actually pays his way into the game, that pays for his popcorn, that pays for his beer, that pays for his hot dog, they don't think that we're good enough to determine who a Hall of Famer is and who's not. Many times it's the fans who know, and it's the guys who don't. Take a look at him getting certain, even voting for certain awards. I think 1967, when Cesar Tovar got the other vote, the first place vote in 1967, instead of Ricardo Yastrzemski, Triple Crown winner, leading the Red Sox to their first pennant since 1946. Anyway, now I'm going off on another tangent. Anyway, fans know levels of Hall of Fame greatness. They know Ruth, Mays, Mantle, Aaron, Bench, Schmidt, all right, as all hitters. Williams, I know I'm leaving guys out, are in the upper echelon. They know that Gibson and Seaver and Cy Young and Walter Johnson are in that air, that stratosphere. They also know that guys like Lou Brock are Hall of Famers, but they're a couple of tiers below. Or Billy Williams. Or Fergie Jenkins. They know that they're just a little bit below. All right? So here's Tom Kelly, wins 2 World Series on it. Oh, wait a minute. And then why is it getting me back to Mattingly? Yes. Mattingly had 5, 6 great, unbelievable years for the Yankees. Kirby Puckett actually had 1 year where he didn't have any home runs at all. Had some unbelievable years. Similar stats. But here's the difference. Mattingly is probably not in because maybe the writers and maybe fans like me look at him and say, if you're a Yankee and you played your whole career with the Yankees, you probably are missing, or you got to win. You got to win. Minnesota, with Kirby Puckett, basically the same stats as Mattingly overall in terms of career and all the rest of it. He's got 2 of them on a franchise that has only 2 of them, even after he's unfortunately passed away. They still only have 2 World Series championships in Minnesota. And they've been there now over 50 years. Actually, over 60 years. They moved there in 61, 60 or 61, maybe even 62. All right, off the top of my head. Puckett's got 2 World Series. Mattingly's got nothing. It's not an indictment against Mattingly, but what you have to look at is franchises too. He played for the Yankees. Kelly and Puckett managed and played for the Twins. Every year, the Yankees are in the mix for the playoffs. Every year, you're wondering if Minnesota's going to win 80 to 85 games to qualify for the wild card or the divisional championship, where they're going to become fodder for the big market teams. That's just reality. So for Minnesota in 87 and 91, with Puckett as their franchise player, getting there and winning in dramatic 7-game fashion, that's got to carry a lot of weight. And I'm not saying that the writers don't get it right. And I'm not saying the writers are entirely right on this, but I'm not saying maybe they're wrong. Look, I'm trying to, I guess, cut it down the middle. Yes, I get mad at the writers because sometimes I think they treat us with contempt, but I also think, the fans anyway, but I also get, I think sometimes the writers, I admit, they get it right. They're looking at Mattingly, did he win? They look at Puckett and they say, yeah, but he won. Not once, but twice. Therefore, I'm looking at Kelly, has an under 500 record with the Twins. But he won twice in a span of 5 years, 87, 88, 99. In a span of 5 years, he won twice, or 5 seasons, he won twice. That's saying something. And he beat 2 Hall of Fame managers, Herzog and Cox. And he beat one, you can even argue this, St. Louis is in the same realm in terms of baseball history as the Yankees and the Dodgers. Outside the Yankees, the Cardinals have won the most World Series of any National League team. So, a guy like Kelly, yeah, under 500 lifetime, but he's got 2 World Series championships. He's got to do something. So there's my shout out for him. Even though Tom Kelly of New Jersey, I don't have your baseball card up here, and I apologize because I was just going through the whole thing. All right. Another guy that, 3 other guys that won, fortunately they're all in the Hall of Fame. Well, Lasorda won twice. Billy Southworth won twice. He finally got into the Hall of Fame in 2008. And this show has not been on since 2008, but I have always been a big proponent of Billy South. Couldn't understand why he was never in the Hall of Fame. He had some great Cardinal teams. He produced great Cardinal teams from the talent that he had, right? And many of he did have Musial and all the rest of it, but he won. And he finally got in. Frank Chance won twice. He's in. Bucky Harris, he won twice. He's in. Bill McKechnie, who won the World Series with the Pirates in 1925 and then with the Reds in 1940. 2 different teams. He's in. Terry Francona, he's got 2 world championships with the Red Sox. He's not in, but he will be in. And had he been able to do it with that Indian team of 2016, he would have been in probably before he retired, because he would have broken 2 curses. Do you realize that? 2 curses. As it is, he's up there in terms of, I guess, Mount Rushmore of in terms of Red Sox franchise, because he ended the curse 2004 with the Red Sox. But here's Houck. Like I said, here's Houck. He's got 2 championships, 4 seasons. He did exactly what the Yankees were expected to do, and he won. And he beat the 62. He beat the 62 Giants in Game 7, and he beat the Reds, a good team with future Hall of Famer Frank Robinson. They had Vada Pinson on that team. They had Jim O'Toole. The reason my brother Jim roots for the team, the reason I root for the team, he won 19 games that year. The Reds had not won since 1940, so they had not been there for 21 seasons. Here are the Yankees with the experience, beat them in 5. Okay, that's why we do get a certain smile on our face when we talk about 1976 with Johnny Bench having a tremendous World Series against the Yankees, and they just didn't beat the Yankees. They swept them. And I always enjoy mentioning that to my buddy who's a big Yankee fan. That great red machine, big red machine. Anyway, let's go to this. I want to bring up Cito Gaston and Danny Murtaugh. First of all, I did not know this, but Murtaugh managed the Pirates 4 separate occasions. And of course, he battled heart problems his whole career as a manager. In fact, he steps in to become a manager in 1957 with the Pirates. And they go 26-25. Now you got to remember, those Pirate teams stunk in the 50s. Then he goes 84-70, 78-76, and 59. Okay, so they have definitely shown improvement. He's got a Pirate franchise over 500 3 consecutive years. Well, to be fair, he's 26-25. He takes over a team that finished 62-92, 30 under 500. Yet he has them 1 game over 500 for the last third of the season. Pirates go 84. I mean, here again is what I'm talking about. You're not talking about the Dodgers or the Giants or the Yankees that he's doing this with. You're talking about the pitiful Pirates of Pittsburgh. How's that for alliteration? And they were putrid. Here's another alliterative word. So they were 26-25 in the last 51 games that he managed, the last third of the season. Then he goes 84-70, 78-76. And then, of course, he wins the World Series, playing 6-17 baseball. Had they played, put it this way, they were 95-59. The only reason I can say this with any kind of certainty, the Mets played 6-17 ball in 1969. So he would have won 100 games with that team. All right. They beat the Yankees in 7 games, dramatic flair, even though they were outscored by New York. All right. Just getting pummeled in some of the losses, like 13-0, 16-2. This was the only high-scoring affair, I believe, you would consider that the Pirates won. And it happened to be Game 7 in Pittsburgh, Forbes Field, and Bill Mazeroski, future Hall of Famer, even though it took a number of chances and a Veterans Committee to put him in. Then, of course, Pirates get off to a bad start, 75-79 in 61. Maybe you could say just a number of things. I think a couple of guys were hurt, but I also think maybe you could say 61, the Reds basically got off to a great start. Someone else just assumes the mantle of success there in 61. But they bounced back to win 93 games. But they finished 4th in 1962. Why? Because that happened to be the year that the Giants and the Dodgers fought like crazy. The Cardinals were involved. And, of course, the Giants and the Dodgers wage another pennant race playoff scenario won by the Giants in dramatic fashion. And then they lose to the Yankees in dramatic fashion. Willie McCovey hitting a bullet that probably had Bobby Richardson not been in the right spot, had he taken his glove down for even just a split second, probably would have been killed. That's how hard the ball was hit. And he had just made like a step or two to the side where the ball was hit. Had he not, it probably would have gone through and the Giants would have won the game. He didn't, and the rest is baseball history. In 63, they sagged to 74-88. They finished in 8th place in 63. But he works his way back up, 80-82. Then he has to sit down, okay? He steps down and away from the game after 64. Wasn't fired. And he leaves because of health reasons, even though I was reading about it. He went to the doctors a number of times. Doctor couldn't find anything wrong with him. But he stepped down for, family and his own personal health reasons. He rests for 2 years, 65, 66. The Pirates asked him to come back at the tail end of 1967. And here's the deal. He finishes 500 with that team. The team finished 500. So he had him for the last half of the year in 1967. But he's building. And remember, he steps down again. All right. So the Pirates are now building for 1971. And they become, basically, you could actually argue that the Pirates and not the Phillies were the Eastern Division team of the 70s. That's what I said, the 70s. They won pennants, or they won divisions in 70, 71, 72, 74, 75, 79. And they won World Series in 71 and 79 after winning the pennants in 71 and 79. Okay? So he wins 89 games, coming back again. They finish in first place. They lose to the Reds. Of course, it's the Big Red Machine that year. They lost them 3 straight, even though the games were like 2-1, 3-2. It was a nip and tuck affair. The Reds didn't hit. I know that bench hit a couple of home runs. I know one helped them either win Game 2 or Game 3 of that series. In 71, though, ready for this? I didn't know this. They win 97 games, lose 65 for a .599 winning percentage. But here's the deal. He actually stepped down or walked away from the game for a couple of weeks to have some medical problems. He had some medical problems. I don't want to go into I think it was with his heart, but I don't want to be inaccurate with that. I was just reading up on this before I went. And he actually stepped down, and I didn't realize this. And he was only like 50 years old at this point. So he wins, and then he wins the World Series and steps down again. And then steps away from the game. Bill Verdon, of course, takes the team over in 1972. They win a division. And, of course, they lost that dramatic Game 5 to the Reds on the home run by Johnny Bench to tie it. And then Hal McRae runs home on the wild pitch. George Foster jumping up and down. Bob Moose threw the wild pitch. And that happened to be Roberto Clemente's last game ever as a Pirate and in a Major League uniform, because he is obviously killed in that plane crash in New Year's Day, 1972, bringing medical supplies, food, and other resources to Nicaragua, which had suffered a huge, devastating earthquake, and the plane never got off the ground. Well, it got off the ground, but it never got into full plane mode or flying mode and just crashed into the ocean. But he comes back in 1973, tail end. He goes 13-13 on a Buck team that finishes third. But I do believe this. They were 13-13 with him. They were 57 and 59 without him. So he got him up to 500 because Verdon got fired at 67 and 69. Verdon, of course, would assume the mantle of the Yankees and almost lead them to a division at 74. But they finished third, but they were in it almost to the last day. Remember when the Mets had to beat the Cubs twice and all the rest of it? And he would manage them in 74, win 88 games. He would manage them in 75, win 92. And in 1976, the Phillies would crash his party and be the other Pennsylvania team to get and win the NL East Division. But he would win 90 games. He was a .540 winning percentage. Won 1,000 games. Won 5 times. His team finished first. Okay, division, pennant, all the rest of it. He won 2 World Series, and yet we're not even talking about him for the Hall of Fame. He's got 1,100 wins on a Pirate similar to Tom Kelly with Minnesota, on a Pirate franchise that went years without winning anything, and then he wins 2 within the space of 12 years or 12 seasons. Not only that, but he nurtures or develops guys like Stargell. And I think managers have that kind of stuff. He manages Stargell. He manages Clemente. He manages Al Oliver. Good player Dave Cash. Doc Ellis, a good pitcher. Had his own problems, but a good pitcher. And other guys on those teams. Oh, Mazeroski. Great, good players. That lumber company of 71 was scary with the players that they had. Richie Zisk, well, he didn't play on the 71 team, but a very good hitter, all the rest of it. And yet, where is Danny Murtaugh's name at Cooperstown? It's not there. It should be. All right. And then I got to talk about Cito Gaston. Now, I got 4 minutes here. Cito Gaston, or actually 3. Cito Gaston, just like Danny Murtaugh, had some health problems. And I was even looking at this. I didn't know this. He stepped down in the World Series championship year for a number of games because he had some problems, medical issues as well. And Gene Tennis took over the team, did a nice job. And he does return. And ready for this, like Murtaugh, steps in. He wins 77 games in his first year. He goes 77-49. The Jays had started that season. This is 1989. He takes over for Jimmy Williams, and they're 12-24 when Cito Gaston assumes command. So not only that, but he turns them around by 12, by 28, by 4. It's a 40-game turnaround when you think about it, right? Because they're 12 under and they finish 28 over. And they finish in first place, 6-11 baseball. The next year, I tell you, it's uncanny how very similar. Each one managed one team. Each team managed those teams to 2 world championships. Yes, Cito back-to-back, spacing with Danny Murtaugh. Both guys had to step down during the season of a championship. Both guys would step away from the game. Both guys would return after the absence to return to manage the same ball club. It's just incredible. But ready for this? He won 86 games. Stepped down. Or actually in 1991, ready for this? He goes 66-54, and he has to be replaced by Gene Tennis. So I'm sorry, it wasn't a World Series year. And Tennis goes 19-14. Okay? Not bad. Then in 92, he wins 96. 92 and 93, his back-to-back world championships, he wins 96 and 95 games. 94, their 500 strike season. 95, they're 56-88. Probably the biggest, probably the lowest of Cito Gaston's career in terms of his managing and all the rest of it. Rebounds to win 18 more games in 96, so they go 74-88. Then it's 72-85. Kind of steps away. He's actually fired, to be honest with you. 72-85. In fact, he is replaced in 97 by Mel Queen, who goes 4-1. No, I apologize. He had to step down, and Mel Queen finishes the season. And then he steps away from the game. He comes back in 2008, wins 51-37 at a 580 clip, but then never has the same success. Goes 75-87, and in his final year with the Toronto Blue Jays, he's 85-77 for a 525 winning percentage. His career, ready? 12 years with the Jays, he wins 894 games, loses 837, has a 516 winning percentage, which gives him on average of about 84 wins. And again, Toronto, of course, is not seen as New York, LA, Chicago in terms of markets. Obviously, it's the only team in Canada. But doing what he did and winning 2 world championships consecutive, which hasn't really happened all that much other than, let's say, a Cincinnati and a Dodger, Cardinal, or a Yankee franchise. All right? To win back-to-back championships, and the only 2 in Toronto's history, to me, puts him in Cooperstown, puts him in Hall of Fame talk. Danny Murtaugh, Cito Gaston, and Tom Kelly, all three win 2 championships, World Series, all 3 need to go to Cooperstown. This is Will O'Toole thanking you again for joining me. Special shout out to Howard Fredericks. He's been really patient. I appreciate so much Howard's unbelievable attention to this show. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Thanks very much.